Good evening, everybody. Welcome to The Secrets of the Astrological Houses. I'm Theresa Reed, the Tarot Lady. I'm the author of many books, including Twist Your Fate, Manifest Success with Astrology and Tarot. I'm going to put the title in. We're waiting for Rebecca Gordon to get here. So give me 1 second. Let's take care of that. All right, but anyhow, I'm going to be joined by Rebecca Gordon of Rebecca Gordon Astrology very soon, and we've definitely got some good stuff to share with you all. So I see a few of you folks showing up: Hippie Chick Vintage, Martha E. Miller, Lane Riley, Totem Rach. Hello, everybody. I might have missed a couple of y'all. You know, this thing moves really fast. I see you, Lily. So if I don't say hi, don't assume that you are being ignored. It moves quickly, and we do need to make sure that we are staying on track here. So as soon as Rebecca's here, we're going to get this thing started. But for people who are joining in, if you've never been here before, I'm always here Monday through Friday doing some astrological forecasts. Hi, Jelly Jelly Bow Belly and Original Sock Dogs. Okay, Rebecca is here. All right, so let me go ahead and see if I can get Rebecca in. Bear with me, you know this technology. Okay, got it. All right, as soon as I can get Rebecca in, we're going to get started. Hey, Amber the Librarian, good to see you. All right, so hang tight. Oh, it's good to see you again, Hippie Chick Vintage. But anyhow, Rebecca,
Hey,
you said hello.
how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm about to give you a proper introduction to people who are tuning in. I just told them a little about myself. So for everyone who is tuning in, Rebecca is in the house, and Rebecca Gordon is one of my favorite astrologers and one of my favorite astrology teachers. I've taken classes with her. I always learn so much from everything that she puts out there. She's an amazing teacher. She's one of the people that I think has so much incredible knowledge. She always blows my brain wide open. Rebecca, I'm so happy that you're joining me tonight.
Thank you so much. I always love our chats and honored to be here with you and our gang tonight. Welcome, everyone. Good to see you all. I see so many great familiar faces in the room.
Yes, you've got a lot of fans. I think we have a couple of mutual friends and followers too. So it's always good to see that little crossover. And I think people are pretty excited to hear what we're going to be talking about today. So again, what we're talking about are the secrets of astrological houses. So Rebecca, for people who are really new to astrology, can you explain what a house is just so they know what the heck we're talking about?
Sure. So the sky is sliced up into 12 slices, kind of like a pizza or a birthday cake, however you want to put it. And 6 of those slices are for the most part above ground, and the other 6 are below ground. And each slice of the sky is called a house. And you've probably heard your Mercury's in the 8th house, my Venus is in the 2nd house, or Pluto's in the 10th house. So basically, that's just that 1/12 of the sky where your planet resides. And houses are so important in astrology, especially the houses on the angles, because if we're just talking about planets and signs, I mean, that's all great, but we're missing half the story. We're missing the where the action happens. So houses in astrology are going to show you where your life is taking place. Like if you have a lot of planets in one house, then most of your life might be taking place in that house of the sky. So I think it's absolutely important in anybody who wants to learn astrology or become a professional astrologer. Houses are essential.
And yeah, you mentioned that there's 12 houses and you said about the points. Can you explain what those points are just for anybody, again, who's completely new?
Yeah, so even though the sky is divided into 12 slices, there are 4 of those slices that are super important, and those are called the angles, what I like to call the angles of incarnation. So the first one is the ascendant. It's how you come into the world, and that's essentially showing me a lot about literally the way you were born, like what things were like in that hospital room. Your ascendant speaks volumes about your birth process, and also there and after how you enter any room in the world, really. It's how you enter the scene. That's your ascendant. Opposite the ascendant, that is sunrise. Essentially, the ascendant, aka the eastern horizon, your rising sign, that is 9 o'clock on the clock. Um, Opposite that is 3 o'clock. which is always going to be where the sun would set, and that is the descendant. And that those are two of the angles. One is about me, the other is about you. So the first angle, the ascendant, is coming into the world. The descendant, the seventh house, is pretty much your shadow projections onto others. It is also the other, but it represents everything that is not you, that you might be projecting, or that's coming into your life in the form of a client, a marriage partner, a business partner. Pretty much anything is over there. And it's just kind of what we say is not us. But also, I feel, I don't know about you, but I feel it's the parts of us that we are working to reclaim and also own as well.
I love that. I've never heard that. I think that actually makes a lot of sense, though. I love that. That is really brilliant.
I've seen people who have planets like, Mars in the seventh house, for example, having gone through stories of like disempowerment and reclamation of their power has become a major theme, for example, or Pluto, Uranus there. There's definitely something there. So those are two of the angles. The other two angles are the IC and the MC, known as also the nadir, which is the base of the chart. And that's where you come from. It's like your root system. So if you were a tree, it's where your ancestry, your soul lineage, where you're gathering everything from. That is the bottom point of the chart. Imam, Coeli, IC, or the nadir. And that tells me about your home, your family, your ancestry, your soul lineage, all of that is beneath you, that will have something to do with you. Now, the interesting thing about that is that the base of the chart, it connects to the top, because there's a line that connects where you're from to where you're going, the IC to the MC, right? So a lot of what you went through when you were growing up has a lot to do with what your career becomes, because the bottom's in an opposition to the top. So depending on what's going on in the root system and what sign rules, and when I say what sign rules the first, what sign rules the seventh, what sign rules the fourth, that's what we're talking about here. What sign rules the fourth has a lot to do with your career too. And then the top of the chart is like the flowers of the tree. It's what you want to share with the world. It's sort of how you project yourself into society, into how you want to be seen in your vocation, your desires. And obviously the root system will feed that. So the top is considered, today people call it the career house, but I think it's much more than career, though.
I agree. It has a lot to do with your reputation and how you feel about it, your status in the world. So it's not just your career, because not everybody gets their status or their reputation or whatnot through the work they do. They can get it through other ways too. So I agree with that.
Yeah, completely. Like somebody could not have a career, but it's how they share themselves in the world. And sometimes the 10th house is even this higher calling, this vocation that it has nothing to do with your actual job. It's just something else that you feel called upon to do, that you're doing in the world, or not. Or maybe it's a dream, but it's something of a soul calling.
That is such a beautiful description, the soul calling. Because again, so often I think people do think of it, it's just career and that's what it's about. But your soul's calling really adds such a beautiful element to the description of the midheaven and the 10th house. So there are 12 houses. If you had to go through like with one sentence for each, just a real quick sentence, what would be for something that you would say for each house?
Okay, so should we dive in to the first house, I guess, to start with?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. And it would be interesting to see also in the chat, as we're talking about a house, any comments or questions about that house. So yes, we'll start with the first house. First house is everything to do with the way in which you were born, as I was saying, the sign that rules the first house. So look to the sign on the cusp of each house as we go through. That has a lot to do with the way you were born. Like, was it a happy environment? Was it a challenging environment? How was it getting out of the womb? That says a lot about how you move through the world. After that, the first house has everything to do with your look, your appearance, how you want to present yourself. It's also the how. It's like in business, the first house ruler tells me how you're going to do your job in the world, like your method, your MO. I'm curious, what is your first house ruler?
So I've got a Libra rising, so Libra's my ascendant. I've got Neptune retrograde in the first house. And it's so funny because I was born feet first, and I know Neptune is all about Pisces, which rules
Yeah.
the. So I came out kicking and screaming, my poor mother. And of course, I was the biggest baby that she had of all four of us. And I was the most dramatic birth. So and it makes sense because I also have a Leo midheaven. So all of that about the birth thing kind of blows me away a little bit. I've never thought of it from that perspective. But yeah, it's Libra rising. So that's my how I operate in the world.
I feel like you certainly do that through relationships and showing up on all of the medias online and really relating so gracefully to the world um, through the writing and many kinds. Air is a sign of relationships. Now, I have Leo rising as
Oh,
well. So I'm showing up in a similar way, but also different in a way of teaching, presenting, and I teach a ton of live classes, which we're going
hmm.
to talk about also at the end of this too. We have a big live class coming up called Beginners Astrology, which is, there's more information on that. But that starts October 10th. So yeah, live teaching has always been my main thing as well with fire. So what is your rising sign? What is your first house ruler? That's your appearance. It's everything about your demeanor, your clothes, and how you do your job. Uh, should we move to the second house or
Yes, the second house.
okay?
The second house I know is kind of a loaded house for some folks too.
Yes. Now, a lot of people call it the money house, right? And I just want to break that down a bit more. Think of it as your crops. Like you're a farmer and you have some crops.
Hmm.
You might have, dill, you might have potatoes, you might have different kinds of things. Now, you're going to need to till the soil on those crops if you want to take them to the 10th house for production. They're going to
Hmm.
need some work. These can be talents, they can be attributes, but you have to work them.
Hmm.
And if you let them alone, then the crops are going to dry up. So the second house, the planets in your second house are going to show me a lot about your specific talents, what they are. And yes, you might turn those talents into income if you take them to production.
Hmm.
But really, these are the crops that you're born with. This is what you have. And the ruler of the second house is going to speak volumes about like your talents and how you like to earn money in the world too. But
Oh,
not,
sorry.
sorry, go on. You say.
I have a question. I want to make sure we don't lose it. Somebody had asked here, Yvonne, what if your second house is empty? Like there's no planets in it is what for folks who are new to astrology it means there's no planets in the second house.
Yeah, that's totally fine. A lot of houses will have no planets. You look to the ruler of that house, and the ruler of that house has a dispositor. That's maybe too advanced for now, but we get into that in my beginner's class. But the rule, let's say it's Scorpio. So perhaps you really enjoy investigation, research, detective work, getting to the bottom of things. If Scorpio rules your second house, maybe you're into tarot, astrology, the occult, and things like that. If Scorpio rules your second house, isn't that you, Teresa?
That's
Yeah.
and I have my moon there.
Oh, wow.
You know, and the moon has a lot to do with dealing with the public and moon and Scorpio. It's really great for the work that I like to say, been chosen to do. So it makes so much sense. Totally right on.
Yeah, that's you. That's right, of course. So, um, all right, shall we go to the third house? That's a fun house.
Yeah, the third house is all about our mind, our short trips, our beginning education, our neighbors, our siblings. What else am I missing? It's a kind of loaded house, Rebecca.
It is, exactly. And I want to remind everybody that the houses are also your cycle of gestation. So we're going to get into this, but houses 9 through 12 tell me about your experience in the womb. And houses 1 speaks about how you were born. 2 is going into your toddler years. Third house is early childhood. So when we get to the third house, you're starting to communicate, you're in elementary school. This symbolizes that developmental stage of your life. So the planets in houses 1 through 3 are going to tell me volumes about what happened as you were growing up from birth to early childhood. It's really about the developmental stages here in 1 through 3, and probably the most important developmental stages happening. So 3 has to do with what the air you were breathing in your home in early childhood that taught you some cognitive patterns. So taught you about what you think about, how you think, what you write about, how you write, how you speak, your intonation. Do you have Mars in the third? Are you a very direct or aggressive or assertive communicator? Do you have Venus in the third? Are you an opera singer? You know, the planets in the third house are going to tell me a lot about how you speak and what you speak about based on what you learned in your early childhood environment. Like, I see a lot of people who have like many brothers and sisters, maybe in a lot was going on, might have a packed third house, you know,
Mhm.
and they really learned how to negotiate and work things out so much early on. Um, all of those things rule the third house. So look at the ruler of your third. The ruler sets the tone. The
Mhm.
planets are the actual happenings there.
Mhm.
Um, so those of you that don't have planets, you know, I see somebody has Scorpio ruling the third. Maybe there was a lot of secrets in the house they were growing up. Maybe they learned about what was hidden very early on. They learned how to pull back the curtain and things like that and be a good investigator in the way they ask questions. Scorpio ruling the third. Somebody has that here. Um,
Well, I have a question too. So I have Capricorn intercepted in the third house. I mean, I know there's sometimes people have different ideas about interception. What do you think about interception? Does it matter? And for people who are listening, interception will come up with certain house systems like Placidus. If you're using whole signs, you're not going to have to worry about it. But what would you say about that for people who might be curious, Rebecca?
Yeah, so if you do use Placidus, and there will be interceptions, and they are real, I believe in them, they're a thing, but I only pay attention to them if there's actually planets caught in the interception. It's like if there's a tunnel underground that nobody knows about, that no cars go through anyway, like let it be a tunnel there. But if cars are trying to move through that and it needs to be a thoroughfare, well, then it's a problem. So I don't really look at it unless there's planets in it. Now, if there's planets in it, there's certain recommendations I would have for those planets. We actually want to wake them up and see how they're communicating with the rest of the chart. They might find it harder to get out there and communicate with the rest of the chart. And I always kind of really look to transits to those intercepted planets,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because that's when they really wake up a lot.
Well, that's really interesting. I was always curious what your thoughts were on interception. So, with the third house, I see some people are putting different things in too. Someone says, no air in my chart. Makes sense. I'm neurodivergent. I mean, that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, no air. That's interesting. I mean, a lot of people have like not any of a certain element, and that's completely fine. I literally recommend my no air clients to do breath work because you literally have less oxygen in your body. It's important to breathe more. The chart is also the body. So um, there's a couple other things. People with less air need to take more breaks in life as well, um, and things like that. You take the Zoom lens out periodically. Okay, shall we move on through the
Yeah,
wheel? Or are
let-
there
let's get to the fourth house. Although, wait a minute. I think I saw one thing. Somebody asked, how do you find your house ruler? You would look at the cusp of that house and find the sign that's sitting there, and then you have to look at what the ruler is. So I've got Sagittarius on my third house cusp. So
Mhm.
that means Jupiter rules that cusp. I ain't got nothing sitting there, but that's it in a nutshell. I hope that helps you.
Exactly, and it's counterclockwise. So the ruler of the third is what's on the left side of that third house, right? Yeah.
Right.
If you haven't seen charts before. Um, so the fourth house we talked about that when we talked about the most important houses, because these are the angles of incarnation, who you are, the other, where you come from and where you're going. 1, 4, 7, and 10, hands down, speak the loudest. So 1 and 4 are really important houses. 1 where you come, 1 who you are, 4 where you come from. So the
Mhm.
fourth house has a lot, the ruler has a lot to do with your parents, your lineage, the tonal vibration that your soul is coming out of, that the soil that you're birthing from. What sign rules it? Was it a Scorpio soil? Was it a Leo soil? What are you gathering from that soil? And each of your siblings might have a different soil because they had a different perception of their childhood and their home.
Mm.
So you might have experienced a Scorpio where somebody else could see it as Libra.
And that makes total sense because my siblings and I all do have different ascendants, except my younger brother and sister have the same ascendant. So they have the same also IC, but I'm different than theirs. My older brother's is different than theirs. And we did a very different, even though we lived under the same house, a very different perspective of what that childhood was like. So I find that very fascinating, super fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too. I was sibling too, and we had a totally different perspective, different fourth house cusp. Exactly. Um, so the planets there speak about that. Also, what kind of home you want to be in, what kind of home you desire as well, which is strangely has a similarity from the home you came from, but that there's something of the same DNA there, but also very different too. But it's the same house essentially. Uh, shall we move on into the fifth?
Yes, because I think the fifth house is also one of those really super loaded houses. And sometimes people get freaked out if they don't see a planet in there. I don't know if you've noticed that for
Yes.
people, but it's like, listen, it doesn't mean you're not going to have romance or kids. So let's like simmer down. So the fifth house, I already given away that romance and children are part of it. What else, Rebecca? What do we need to know about that fifth house?
Exactly. I have the same thing. Clients come to me, they're like, I have no planets in my fifth. Am I ever going to find love? It's like, yes, of course. But I will say this. I mean, honestly, people who have um, planets in a house are more predisposed to certain kinds of experiences in love. So it more so if you have planets there, it speaks to specific nature of experiences that you are programmed to have in love.
Mhm.
Like if you have Uranus there, you will have some love experiences that are very Uranian in your life. But if you have no planets there, it's a blank canvas. And hey, you create your own reality there. There's no pillars. It's open. Um, okay, the fifth house, yes, love. It also represents the developmental stage when you're kind of like a teenager and you're coming of age, and those sorts of planets there demarcate experiences you had in that sort of teenage realm, perhaps preteen into early 20s, but mainly around the teenage space. You'll see a lot of in the fifth house too. And absolutely, it is love and romance, and how you want to do love is the ruler of your fifth house. What is your approach to love? What do you want love to be like? And look at your partner's fifth house ruler, look at yours, get a sense of each other's perceptions of what defines love. Um, and planet, a lot of the fifth house is also fertility. So if we see planets there like the moon and Cancer, you know and more fertile signs, we could say yes, that might be a more fertile person, especially if they have like Jupiter conjunct the moon in the fifth. I mean, that person could really have a lot of babies. um, so I mean, it is fertility, it's children, it is kind of related to that, like that birth, that house of birthing. It's also creative projects. So a lot of people don't have children, they write books. um,
Mhm.
like me here. um, so and things like that, and some people have children and write books like you. But the fifth house is all of that. It is all of our creations, and it's your stylistic mark if you're an artist. So I went to art school many years ago, and I would notice that a lot of my fellow students would create art that was that's okay. Their art really looked like the planets in their fifth house.
Mhm.
And so like um I have Neptune in my fifth, and my art was always very Neptunian, where I had classmates that, might have um the moon there or something, and much more like sentimental art. And so it really is your stylistic mark too, as a musician, as an artist, anything like that. Now, if you have children, sometimes the planets in your fifth house actually speak about the nature of each child. Like sometimes you see the number of planets, sometimes it's the number of children, and the nature of the planets sometimes is the nature of the children too. Like if I can see Pluto there, that might be one of the children might be like really intense, and another child might be a Venusian child, you know, wanting to create beauty in the world. If you have Venus there.
That's very fascinating. So I have Saturn and Chiron in the fifth house. And I've got a daughter who's very, very serious. And my son is kind of a serious dude too, but there's a little more lightness there. So that's super interesting. I love that.
Maybe your son will do some chironic sorts of things in the world as well. Maybe he might get into, I don't know, humanitarian work or chiropractic work or something that has to do with helping others at some point.
Well, he does do humanitarian things, so that makes a lot of sense. So, total sense. Jelly Bow Valley says she has Mercury, Mars, and Neptune in the fifth. That's a packed house. That's
Oh, wow.
super packed. What would you say about that combo?
I would want to know what sign they're in and if they're all together, who they're talking to, what song are they playing? I mean, there's a lot of Mercury, Mars, and Neptune, though. It really depends the sign they're in. I'm guessing she has Neptune in Sagittarius. I don't know.
She says Neptune in the fifth and a musician child. Wow.
Oh, we're talking about children. Yes, that kind of child, an artist or musician. Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Super interesting.
Wow.
And I know some people get, again, really wigged out about that fifth house, but I always say, listen, it doesn't, like you said, you get to, if it's empty or if it's got afflicted planets, it doesn't always mean a lack of love or lack of children. So we don't want to ever get hung up on that. Definitely not hung up on that.
100%. Yeah, I agree completely. So yeah, not to worry at all about that. But it's a beautiful house. It's the fun house. It's the play house. I always think of like the fun house in a fair. It's kind of like that. And it's what you consider recreation and fun overall. What do you do for fun? That speaks a lot to your fifth house. That person who has Mercury and Mars there, I would imagine they have a literary habit, a good writing or speaking skill, as well as Mars, which is perhaps also they know how to assert themselves and be also quite creative with it, Neptune. So these are all creative marks that they have as well, ways that they'll express their own creativity. And it turns out it's their children too. Well, that's DNA. The chart is your DNA. You pass your chart onto your child too. Do you all realize that like a lot of times the parents' rising sign is the child's sun sign because it's sort of the qualities that the parent projects onto the child, and the child becomes that sun. You see that so much.
Super interesting. I love all this stuff about these developmental stages. You're kind of blowing my mind tonight. I really, really dig that. And I gotta laugh when you say about what's in your fifth house talks about what you do for fun. I got Saturn there, and work is this is the thing I love to do the most is work. So how funny is that too? So mind blown as always whenever I talk to you. What about the sixth house? Now the sixth house we know has a lot to do with our work. Speaking of work.
That's right. It is the back to work house. Okay, so all right, enough playing out in the sun. All right, now do your homework. Right? We're back to the sixth house. It's homework time. The sixth house has a lot to do with actually, it is work, but it's also your body. It's the Virgo house, and it speaks to how your body functions, your general sense of health. The sign ruling your sixth house actually has a lot to do with an organ in your body or a musculoskeletal system, a part of you that might need more attention. So I always look to the planet that rules the sixth, and I want to fortify that area in health too. And as far as work goes, the sixth house speaks volume about how you like your work day to flow. So do you have Cancer ruling the sixth house? Do you like to work with a cup of tea on your couch with all the pillows and your cat? Do you have Capricorn ruling your sixth? Do you need a more structured kind of work environment? What rules your sixth is going to speak a lot about the daily routine, the kind of environment you need on the day-to-day. And also the planets in your sixth are going to speak about specific kinds of ways that you want to serve, that you want to be of service to the world. So, like, who here has planets in their sixth house? They speak, let's see. Like, I see people, I'll give you an example, with like Neptune in the sixth, and they don't know how to stop giving. They can give and give and give, and they're not asking for money. Neptune, Jupiter, they're just so generous, There can be Saturn in the sixth, where you really want the day to be run like a tight ship. So it speaks a lot about how you want to serve and how your workflow shall go in the day.
Well, Love Nap says for the sixth house, she has, hi Kimmy, Virgo Sun and Libra Venus in her sixth house. So it's a Virgo on the sixth house cusp, and her Virgo Sun and her Libra Venus both sit in the sixth house. What is that saying about Kimmy for work?
I love that. So I would say, Kimmy, it's important for you to know that you are helping others and being of service on a day to day. If your sun is in your sixth, you shine from the place. When you help others, you light up. That gives you the most light. If your sun is in the sixth house, that's right, your sun is in Libra. And I would say also, you make others feel more beautiful. You make others feel better about themselves. In your service, in the work that you do, you're probably either creating some kind of aesthetic beauty or making people feel better. We see a lot of sometimes interior designers that have like Venus in the sixth a lot. Um, the sun in the sixth depends on the sign, can speak to how you want to serve, but you're such a giving soul if you have the sun in Libra. I would say
Oh, no, it's the Sun in Virgo, Venus in Libra. Sorry.
Sun in Virgo, Venus in Libra.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, I said that wrong. It would be Virgo on the cusp of the sixth house. Sorry
Yeah.
about that.
Sun in Virgo, Venus in Libra. Well, still, she has amazing. Virgo Libra is sort of like what the country Paris. I mean, sorry, what the city Paris is a like a Virgo Libra cusp. You know, it's like the cusp of aesthetics. It's sort of like you you create with meticulousness in Virgo, and you finesse and grace it all and do all the beautiful draping in Libra. So it's really precision and beautiful aesthetics here, and delivering and wanting to be of service to make the world more beautiful, maybe to deliver um, words beautifully. Virgo, it's almost like words and illustrations together. It's almost like you're doing both. You're doing something that makes people feel more beautiful in their spaces, but also wisdom and information. What a service. Wow.
Right on. And she says precision is so accurate. So you're right on, Rebecca. All right, the seventh house is another one that people get really bent out of shape about. If it's empty, and I've got an empty seventh house, by the way, seventh house also, like the fifth house, has to do with relationships. So
Yeah.
what do we need to know? What are the secrets of the seventh house, Rebecca?
Yeah. All of those I have empty houses have no fear, right? It is a big house because it's opposite the ascendant. So the ruler of the seventh is going to tell us about the kind of partner that you subconsciously desire.
Mm,
um, Maybe your conscious mind is saying, well, I want this, I want that. But there's another deeper part of you that's like, this is what I need in my life. And the ruler of the seventh speaks to those really deep internal needs that you have. So let's say if you have Taurus ruling the seventh, you might be like subconsciously attracted to this very earthy, stable type of person. And maybe that's what you need in your life.
mhm.
Um, and also, the seventh house has to do with clients. Whoever's on the other side of the table, it could be a marriage partner, it could be a business partner. Let's be clear though, it's not friends, it's not brothers and sisters, it's your business partner, it's your marriage partner, um, or it's your client. It could be the other person who you're working with. Um, the planets in the seventh house are going to speak often about, if there are planets there, the kinds of relationships that you want to have, the kinds of experiences that you're set up to have in this life, in your marriage. So like if you have um I don't know, what's a planet like Saturn there, you might be very attracted to meeting an older, more serious kind of partner, or having a very serious, committed relationship that builds slowly.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've got Aries on the seventh house cusp, but I've always liked the bad boys, the rogues, somebody who's going to be a little exciting and dangerous. So fire energy, that really actually makes a whole lot of sense. It's no wonder I've always liked those spicy musicians. So totally makes sense about that seventh house cusp. I don't have any planets in there, but that is like so right on. And even the way I've worked with clients over the year, I always like the ones with really exciting, juicy stories or really interesting career choices. That always like really fascinates me a lot. So right on, totally right on.
Love that. And definitely makes sense for you. Yeah, I have Uranus. I mean, I have Aquarius ruling the seventh too, and I always want for like very eccentric people too. Still do. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Unconventional partners.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Now, the eighth house, which we're moving into next, this is one also that kind of gets people a little spooked. And I find that a lot of people really worry about that. I've got a full eighth house, by the way. So let us know, what is the eighth house all about? Why do people get so scared of the eighth house, Rebecca?
Because it's called the house of death, right? And everybody's afraid of death. Um, so the eighth house is, unfortunately, it ends up to be this kitchen sink of astrology. People are like taxes, death, throw it all in there. Contracts, sure, agreements, and it becomes a sort of repository. But actually, let's think about it. So the eighth house happens after seventh house. The seventh house is about marriage, commitment, connections. Um, and then the eighth house is when you're in that sort of amorphous state of merging, when you share everything with somebody. It
Mm-hmm.
connects a lot to your vulnerabilities and how you feel about being vulnerable, how you feel about letting go and completely merging with another and connection. It can speak to our hangups too around connection, our challenges.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, it speaks about how you merge. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we subconsciously want certain kinds of experiences as well. Now, there's also, oh, I forgot about sex, of course. How could I forget? The eighth house is also the house of sex, right? Death, sex, and taxes. Yeah. So the planets in the eighth house also can speak to the kinds of sexual activities that a person might like as well. Can be the planets in the eighth house also, and what rules the eighth house, what you want that merging to be like, to feel like, and all. So, as well, I think with your partner, it's important to know each other's eighth houses and what you both deeply desire.
I'll never reveal anything. But I always find that house though, people get some really freaked out about it. So, and topic of sex and death and taxes, I think are complicated things. Other people's money, these are things people don't like to talk about. It's really a lot about the intimacy and the taboos
Mm-hmm.
in polite society. That, oh, you don't talk about your money or how much your partner makes, and we certainly don't talk about our sex lives. So. Although it's better now than it used to be, but those are things that I think also make it kind of a nervous house for people.
Definitely. That's right. You brought up a good point. The partner's money as well. The eighth house absolutely does symbolize other people's money as well. Yes, the partner's money, money that's not ours, but also it symbolizes the second house is your money that comes in the form of like paycheck or from things you did, you
Hmm.
received, that the income. But the eighth house is more like your finances at large, like investments you make and royalties on something, residuals and stuff like that, stocks and all of that. Your finances are overall in the eighth house too. Because it's also a very sort of, yeah, intimate area that not many people see. It's sort of those, yeah, the places that not everyone sees.
Right on. So what about now our ninth house? Moving right along. And I
Yeah,
want to know, in development, is the ninth house, did you say that would be like conception? Did I get that right, or did I get
yeah.
that?
Conception. So, I mean, right, you're born on the cusp of the ninth. So this is the beginning of the journey. Now, from the ninth to the 12th, is going to tell me about all of the things that happened when you were in the womb in sequential order.
Mm,
So, like, when you have planets that are in your 12th house, I'm learning about the experiences that your mother had right before birth. And that's actually really important in as far as like how you develop and the subconscious patterns that you have. And that's your 12th house,
hmm.
the planets that happen right before the ascendant. But the ninth house is okay, she found out she's pregnant. What's going on in her life? What's happening? That's the ninth house. So it speaks a lot to the mother's psyche and the brain chemistry that she was emitting in when she first conceived,
Hmm.
really. So you're learning a lot about that time period too. The ninth house speaks to the sense of um, expansion overall, whether we're going to expand through travel or learning, it speaks to the part of you that says, what if life can be better? What if we can do more? What if we can grow? We can go to school and travel across the world. And it also, in the ancient world, it was called the house of God.
Ooh,
The ninth house was just God. I love traditional astrology for its simplicity. you know,
right.
you know, God. Because that's where, it's religion. It's where you find God. And all studies back then were religious studies. You weren't really allowed to study much else other than religion for a long time until the year 1100, pretty much. So, the house of God, the house of studies, the house of philosophy, all of these sorts of things. The ruler of the ninth is going to speak a lot to your approach to learning, how you learn, what you want to learn about, and things like that. Now, I love dispositors. Those of you that know astrology on here know what I'm talking about. But it's if you know, you know, right? The ruler of the ninth house and is the dispositor. So let's say it's Aries ruling your ninth. I will look to the placement of Mars to tell me a lot about the kinds of religious or travel experiences or learning experiences that you crave.
Interesting. Well, I have Gemini on the ninth house cusp. I have Venus and Cancer intercepted there, and my Mercury is in the eighth house. So all that occult stuff.
Wait, Venus rules the ninth house cups and Venus is in the ninth house.
No, no, no. My ninth house cusp is Gemini, but Venus
Right.
is intercepted in Cancer
Oh, got
in
it.
the ninth house. And then with now I'm getting into this astro. Well, bear with us. So Gemini on the ninth house cusp.
Oh,
Mercury then is in my eighth house.
oh yeah, the ruler of your ninth and your eighth. Of course, it's deep into the occult
Yes.
and the esoterics and everything that is hidden. And Mercury, you're exposing it. You're bringing it out into the world. You're giving it a voice. You're giving a voice to that which has been hidden.
Right on, and again, makes sense. And so this would be and with Venus there, would that mean that my mother was feeling lots of love when she conceived?
It is.
My parents were deeply in love, so I'm going to have to check and see if all of my siblings, what they've got going on in that ninth house. Now you've like sparked some big time curiosity. I got to see if I'm the only one that has Venus there. But we're super, super in love, so that actually makes a lot of sense. All
That's
right.
amazing. Yeah, everyone, look to your ninth house to see what was up with your parents around the time they had you. It's interesting for sure.
Totally. And now the 10th house, we've already talked a little bit about career and the midheaven and status and reputation.
Yeah.
Anything you need to know about that 10th house?
So the 10th and the fourth house also represent the parentals. Sometimes the fourth house shows the qualities of mother, 10th house father, sometimes vice versa. And the planets in those houses can often represent your father and mother as well. Um, I think the 10th house overall, as we said before, it's not always the ruler might not always actually be your career, but it might be something like your higher calling, something
Mhm.
you feel called upon to do, but it might not be your day job. For some people, that is. Um, it is your career, it is your vocation, it's your higher calling, it's your soul calling. It does not have to be your actual job, though, I would say. Planets in your 10th house are going to tell me about how the kinds of experiences you want to have at work. Like if you have Saturn there, you're going to work really hard. You love to work hard and you will work your way all the way to the top. Rise to the top like cream, right? That is Saturn. The hard work gets your way to the top. But that's your philosophy. That might be how you see work.
Mhm.
Um, if you have Jupiter in your 10th, you're kind of lucky because there's a part of you that's like, you might just get work easily. You're very open to new opportunities. They show up for you at the right time, the right place, and all of that.
Fit America has her sun in the 10th house. Sun would be probably a pretty great placement if you want to be in the public eye, I would think.
Absolutely. They shine from the public. Who has that?
Fit America went by really quickly. This is going by a little quickly, so I can't catch
Oh,
everyone.
gotcha.
But
Yeah.
I saw that with the sun, and I would assume, in your opinion, that probably means she likes to be, or maybe should be in the spotlight.
hmm Absolutely. And your career is something that you need to find yourself in. Your sun is who you are, so you need to be yourself in your work. It's not just like a job. It's something where you express yourself.
Hmm. So, what about the 11th house? Let's move right along.
Yes, moving along here. The 11th house is the kinds of people that you like to associate with and the kinds of social experiences you want to have is the ruler of your 11th house. So, like, what groups are you attracted to? Things like that. Now, often what I find is if there's a planet in the 11th, you're attracted to also people that are the nature of that planet. Let's say you have Pluto there. You might be really attracted to powerful people with Pluto in your 11th.
I got Pluto there.
You're probably aligned with a lot of powerful people. Naturally, they come to you, you come to them, you meet each other. Or people with a lot of pull and things like that. They just, you cross each other's paths, right? You're in each other's worlds. And, but what it also is that there's a part of you that is also learning to own that you are actually that person. You're attracted to that kind of plutonic, very powerful person because they represent that part of you. And so you're learning about it through friendships and you're activating that part of yourself through your relationship to them. But they are your mirror. So it's where you find your mirrors, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. By Amanda Jane Perry says, my moon, Jupiter, and Chiron are in Cancer. Oh, that's the 10th house. We moved on to the 11th. But I also see a Saturn in the 11th house. And so that would be serious types of friendships, maybe older, mature people.
Yeah, I mean, there could have been a time where you found it maybe like harder to make friends with Saturn in the 10th too, and maybe, I mean, in the 11th, and you might have said, well, these are my friends for life. You know, there could have been people you know for a long time that you trust. You might be attracted to older friends. Yeah, people who are more serious or quite discriminating with your friends, I'd imagine as well. With Saturn there, not just anybody can come into your circle.
Somebody asked about Mars in the 11th. Spirit and stars. I have Mars in the 11th too, Spirit and stars. We're in good. And also Eleanor has Cancer in Mars in the 11th. So we got a couple Martian people with the 11th house. What about that?
Wow. So all of you are attracted to people in leadership, but they're also reflecting a part of you that is a leader. So you are all leaders, and you're attracted to very strong people that are also leaders, but they're reflecting the leader in you. So I would say that we have a lot of leaders on the call right now. When you're in a group, you take on the role of leadership often if you have Mars in the 11th. That's your role within a group. The planets in the 11th really speak to the roles you play in clubs and societies and friend groups and things like that. So that's interesting. We have a lot of strong leaders here.
Right on. And what about now the 12th house? Now, 12th house also, for folks who are tuning in, gets a bum rap. I remember when I was first studying astrology and I would read that 12th house and I'd see like prison, hospital, therapy. And I, again, I remember I was at the time like 15 years old. So I was conjuring up images of Midnight Express and all of that. So what do we need to know about that 12th house? Help us unpack this one, Rebecca.
Yeah, that is definitely the most misconstrued house out of all of them, hands down. The 12th house. I mean, okay, it's like this. You came into life and you happen to have some suitcases. Well, those are your planets in the 12th house. We'll get to that. Okay, so first of all, the sign ruling the 12th house speaks a lot to it's similar to the 4th house, but not. So it speaks to where you come from, but not your actual ancestral lineage always, per se. The 12th house more so speaks to like the scent on the cloth that your soul has carried in. And that's also known as vasana in this tradition. So in Hindu tradition, so when we talk about samskara, vasana is like the scent on the cloth. What your soul, the imprint that your soul has carried on. So like if we look at lifetime to lifetime, that's not, that might be your ancestry or not. We're going to see there was an imprint left before you came in. You can call that a past life or whatever you want to call it, but there's something else that you're carrying into this life. That's what the 12th house speaks of. And now we know, because we've been doing developmental astrology here, that the 12th house also has a lot to do with what happened in the last month before you were born. So what happened in the last couple months before you were born has a lot to do with what people call past lives. And I think whether you want to call it ancestry, past lives, prenatal astrology, it's kind of all the same actually. They're all in alignment. They're all going to hum the same tune in the end of the day. But it speaks to the imprint that your soul is coming in with. So, like, if you have Aries ruling your 12th, you're coming in with a warrior imprint. You're
Mm,
coming into that imprint of like strength, got to take action, a subconscious desire for that. Now, the planets in your 12th are like suitcases. And it is your job and your mission, if you have planets in the 12th house, to open up and unpack each one of those suitcases because they are parts of you and your soul lineage that you're needing to integrate. So let's say you have Uranus there in your 12th house. Perhaps we're speaking to a soul lineage that did not feel free,
mhm,
that felt like they were sublimated, they were tied down. And in this life, you are saying, there's a part of you that just needs to break free.
mhm.
Maybe you are helping empower others. Maybe you are working yourself to break free. But first, you have to unpack that Uranus suitcase for yourself and to free yourself. And then you will free others. So, of course, concurrently, a couple months before you were born, your mother might have had some experience about that was shock about breaking free too. And
Mhm.
so that affected you a great deal because it happened right before birth as well.
I love this. I mean, it makes, again, a lot of sense. And somebody had asked, all of my personal planets are in the 12th. I mean, that Heather Vin 7363, what does that mean? You've got all your personal planets. I would assume it means Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, is what I'm assuming. What that would be a loaded house, Rebecca. What would that mean?
Absolutely, it is loaded. So I would really look at each one of those planets separately and each one of those suitcases. And I would imagine this is a life of deep introspection and really you're untying the knots in this lifetime. You're doing a lot of spiritual work. A lot of this work that you're doing in this life is taking place in the unseen world.
Mhm.
it it's a house of karma, meaning that you are all breaks in the codon sequence. When you all have planets in the 12th house, there's been a lineage of patterns. You can imagine a tapestry that has a pattern repetition over and over and over. And then if somebody born with planets in the 12th house happens, they break the pattern. They're the pattern breaker because
Mm,
they're the one who's taking up all the repository of patterns that have been going on in this whole soul lineage. And they're like, oh, Mars is there. Anger's been abused or
mm,
misused. Okay, this person's learning out how to not overuse or underuse that planet. They're having to learn how to articulate
mhm.
and I'd say to tonify the nature of that planet that's in the 12th house. So you're the break in the sequence of that lineage and you're the person. It's like when all of the sediment comes up from the bottom of the ocean, you're seeing all the things and you're clearing through them. And it's
Mhm.
different after you. It can feel like a lot of work. It can feel like a lot of karma. It can feel heavy when you have a lot of planets in the 12th. And, but it's also a life that is extremely rewarding because you go so deep and you unpack the suitcases. And those planets then become your gurus, your teachers. So each
Mhm.
planet that was once a suitcase becomes your guru, your guardian, your teacher. And it can help you to teach and be a way shower for others as well.
Well, I love that idea. The suitcases, that's a great analogy and a fabulous way of looking at that 12th house. And it takes the fear out of it and turns it into something that's actually deeply, there's a potential for deep healing there. And I think that's amazing. I'm super, super interested in all of this life phases. I mean, I've not heard that before.
Hmm.
And Rebecca, I think that, I mean, oh my God, you're like making me think all kinds of new things about that 12th house, that first, second, third. So super interesting. I cannot wait to start fiddling around with my chart from that perspective. I always learn so much from you. Now you've got a class coming up. So people who are here, we can't get to all the questions. I'm so sorry because we're coming near the top of the hour. But if you have enjoyed what we're talking about tonight and you want to learn with Rebecca all this really deep, cool stuff, you've got a beginner's class. It's starting like in a couple of days. Can you
It's
tell?
starting on October 10th. You
Yeah.
are right. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I have been teaching this class for about 18 years now, since I was in my mid-20s, actually. I began, and this is a full term. It's 14-week beginner's class where you will learn all about the houses, the planets in the houses, and ultimately by the end of this 14 weeks with me, you will learn how to read birth charts so fluently, so gracefully, and transform people's lives. So it's 14 weeks, and my students are always like, they're like, wait, I can't believe just 14 weeks ago or 12 weeks ago I was there and now I'm here.
Mhm.
It's always kind of it's always kind of shocking, but really I make it super easy to learn, very organized. We do one layer at a time, and the lessons are also very kind of dynamic, interactive. We have office hours, study halls, students can ask me questions. There's so much support this year, and they get all these beautiful media booklets we made for them. So there's a lot of support because every year I taught it, I added on more and more, and now we have like mentors that are helping out, and just so much more that makes it easier to learn. Like wherever you live on the planet, if you miss the lives, they're in the portal. You have lifetime access. Like it's a tremendous course, and anybody that wants to take astrology seriously or become a professional astrologer, I could not recommend this more. Like it is your go-to place. Once you take this course, you're going to feel like you have the strongest foundation you can build upon. And after that, we do have other courses, of course, but this is a great place to start no matter what you want to do. You might not want to be an astrologer, you might want to integrate it into your practice. And we have a lot of students like that too, that are herbalists and things that want to bring astrology into their practice also. However, I'll say that we've graduated so many highly successful, thriving professional astrologers into the world. And I'm super proud of that. I mean, it's like I support all our alumni, and they all come back and say hi as, you know, we continue a relationship, you know, as the years go on. I have relationships with my students from like 15 years ago still. So that's sort of the beauty of it too.
Well, I've taken classes with you. Your classes are always amazing. I'm actually going to be hanging out with one of your students, Astrology by Celeste, on Friday, talking about Mars retrograde. And she's an amazing astrologer, and that credit really falls on you because you gave her such a good foundation. And the one thing I'm also going to say about the beginner's class, y'all, even if you are someone who's been studying a while, same like with yoga, you always want to go back to those basics. And this is going to be a class that's not just giving you basics, but as you can see just from our little talk here, it's going so much deeper than that. So you'll come out of the class really having some great knowledge, and you'll be able to speak that astro lingo fluently. And again, it also opens you up to all these other possibilities, the intermediate, the advanced stuff. Rebecca's got classes on health, all of that. So this is the perfect way to get that foundation rock solid. It starts October 10th. You still got time to sign up.
Oh,
Rebecca, where can they go to sign up with you?
they can go to my link in bio on Instagram if you're here on Instagram, or if you're watching this somewhere else, it will probably be below in your links and everything. RebeccaGordonAstrology.com is my website, and there's a banner above that where you can sign up for the beginner's course. We only host this once a year, so this is your time. I hope
Mhm.
you join me. And also it's 20% off. We're offering a like because it's this year and there's recession and everything like that. We are inflation and everything. So we're basically lowering the price too for people this year. And we're offering um, three extra classes I've thrown in too.
Wow.
Um, just and there's payment plans available. I'm throwing in three extra courses this year. We just decided to make it a really juicy package. So you not only get the course, but all these other kind of supplementary materials too.
Awesome. You're always so generous with your knowledge, your wisdom. So generous sharing it with us here tonight, Rebecca. I love this conversation. And for everyone again who's listening, I can attest I've taken classes with Rebecca, always top notch. You're going to walk away completely new perspective, mind blown every time. And tonight, here we are talking, and you're opening my brain up to these new things. And I'm a Gemini. Of course, I love to learn, and I just love your perspective so much. So everybody, you know what you're going to do. Get over to Rebecca Gordon Astrology, check out the class, sign up, get in, you are going to be in for a treat. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining me here and sharing the secrets of the astrological houses.
Thanks so much for having me. I had such a great time with you.
Always
Thanks.
good to talk to you. Have an amazing night, everybody. Good night, Rebecca.
Good night. Good night, everyone. Thanks for joining. Bye.